Maddie, guess what month it is?
It's finally March.
It's March! Oh my God. You know what? March is not only for basketball, but in addition, it's my birthday month.
It is. It's also state for Vivi's gymnastics meet. So a lot of things going on.
I was just going to make a joke that I was born into the darkness, but yeah, it is also gymnastics meet time. And we're going to jump right into this today because obviously the big conversation for this time of year is bracketology, getting to the madness and everything else. And we have brought onto the show today 801 Bracketology. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me. It's fun to be on the show.
I actually normally introduce myself for names first. Do you actually have a name, or do you just go by 801 first name bracketology
I'll
last?
give you my first name. My first name's Sam.
Okay, how you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great.
All right. Well, Sam, to give everybody a little background, was voted as one of the top newcomers by the Bracket Matrix last year. He is one of the best bracketologists out there, and he is also a contributor for our SEC bracket grid that we do once a week. Sam, could you give us a little bit of just general bracketology and understanding? Because there's just some things people don't get, like how is a bracket actually built?
Well, man, there's a lot that goes into it. I was wondering if you guys wanted me to share my screen and kind of show you how I built
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah, that would be great.
If you're interested. Oh, it hosted disabled participant screen sharing. You can turn that off and I'll.
Way to go, David.
I totally messed things up. You know what? If
Oh,
you
you're
want to
good.
email me some stuff later, I'll put it on the screen as we talk here. when
All
we,
right, that sounds good. No worries.
yeah.
So, just looking at, I first thing I do is come up with a seed line. Um, I rank the teams 1 through 68 that I think are going to be in the field. Take the 32 teams that are going to be the conference winners, put them where I think they should be approximately, and then you need to fill in 36 at-large teams from there. And so, just going down the net rankings, looking at the team sheets, determining who's better than the next team, and getting them all put into a seed line, which is just generally the teams 1 through 68 as they're ranked, no sort of bracket or anything like that. And so I'm looking right now at my seed line that has all the teams 1 through 68, and then I do a little bit of a scrub on it. So I'll go in every week, once or twice a week, and just scrub the teams. And what that means is I take teams 1 and 2, and I will look at their team sheets side by side and say, all right, do I have this right? What are their quad records? What are their road wins? What are their metrics? And determine if those two teams are correct in the correct order. And if they are, I'll jump to teams 2 and 3 and compare teams 2 and 3. And if I find that team 3 is better than team 2, I'll jump them into the second spot. And then what I need to do from there is go compare that team then to team 1, and then move so forth down the bracket.
I
And
mean,
so
I was going to say that sounds like a complicated process to go through each of those teams. Like, do you have like a computer algorithm that actually help you out with that?
I don't use a computer algorithm, and there's a reason for that. I used to use a computer algorithm, and I felt like it took a lot of the actual meaning of building a bracket out of it. And so, I mean, the whole purpose of doing this and the whole purpose of people on Bracket Matrix is try to replicate what the committee does and how the committee is going to put a field together. And for me, that involves looking directly at teams' resumes, coming up with my own thoughts about why someone should be better than the next team, and putting them into a bracket. And I feel I get that other people use algorithms, but I feel like that takes a lot of the purpose out of it. So I don't do that.
I totally get it. Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. I'm a big fan of the human element myself, except when
Yeah,
it
I
comes to
think
taking notes in class. But go ahead, Maddie.
for sure. I think, when you look at analytics, like you get a much better picture when it comes time for the teams to actually play against each other rather than, like most people do it. They put their team as far as they think they're going to go and then build the rest around it. So
Sure. Yeah, that's for sure.
I've learned a lot about bracketology this year. David can attest to that for sure.
Yeah, you're the third one we found on the show this since our first season now. So quick question. This is something that I've seen regularly Vandy fans talking about over the last 2 weeks, and they keep bringing this up. Why did the net replace RPI, and what are the benefits and takeaways of why this system was put into place?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasoning behind this, and I may not be the most qualified person to talk about it, but The net replaced RPI because there was a lot of flaws in RPI. RPI didn't take into account where you played a team, scoring margin for how you were played against a team, didn't take into account your offensive defensive efficiency. If I recall correctly, it was just teams 1 through 50 is a quad 1 win. I guess it wasn't quads back then, but that's just how they looked at it down the bracket. And so now they've replaced RPI with net, and net takes into account a lot of different things. It no longer takes into account scoring margins, which is probably a good thing because that led to some problems in the past. But so they took that piece out of it, but it still takes into account your offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, and then obviously who you play, where you play them, and puts into practice that quadrant system.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to get that explained a little bit because I've been seeing it a lot on our Twitter here as of late. Let's get into some actual teams now. And, we can get away from the broad topics here for a little bit. As far as locks, now these are some of the more boring teams probably on Selection Sunday, but who do you have from the SEC right now as a lock coming into Selection Sunday?
Let's look. I've got Alabama, obviously, as lock.
Clearly.
Clearly. I've got Tennessee as a lock, clearly. Just scanning my list here. I've got Kentucky as a lock. I've got A&M as a lock. Arkansas as a lock. Missouri as a lock. And then Mississippi State I don't have quite locked, but I think they're pretty close.
Okay.
And same for Auburn. I've seen some people locking Auburn today, and I could get behind that. I haven't done it personally yet, but I think they're close.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm like you. I've seen a lot of people putting that on there. Let me ask first on these locks. Can you explain first off, Kentucky coming into February? This has probably been one of the biggest rocket ships of the month because coming into February they were probably not even in the tournament in some people's brackets, and now they're pushing a 5 seed. It looks like. Can you explain where you have Kentucky at and what has led to them rising so much through the last 28 days or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big part of what they've done in the past month is their rise in the metrics, and they've kind of, let me pull up my team sheet here, but they are currently an average of about 17 in predictive metrics, and in the result-based metrics they're about 19. So they're somewhere around the 20th best team in the country if you look strictly at metrics, which obviously we don't look strictly at metrics, but
right.
But that's where metrics would put them at. And that's a jump from, I think, about 15 spots where they were at the beginning of February, where a lot of people had them on the bubble and were questioning where they were going to end up if they were going to be in the tournament. But here we are today. And so I'm looking back at their schedule through February. You've got some losses there at the beginning of February, including the Arkansas loss, the Georgia loss, and then recently you had the Vandy loss. But they've beaten some good teams in there. They hammered Auburn by 30 points, beat Tennessee again, beat Mississippi State on the road. That was a big win for them. Beat Arkansas this weekend, and I was really impressed with them this weekend. So right now, I have got them seated on the 6th line, even with that loss to Vanderbilt. I have them in a group of about 3 teams that I think are super comparable, and those 3 teams are Kentucky, Northwestern, and Texas A&M.
Okay.
And so I keep looking at those 3 teams and trying to compare who's better, and I keep flip-flopping back and forth. But right now I have it ordered Kentucky, Northwestern, Texas A&M.
Okay, that's really interesting to see that A&M and Kentucky right there next to each other as far as metrics go. Let's move on to Alabama real fast because this is something that I've had a little bit of curiosity. At one point, a lot of people said number 1 seed overall. I don't know where you have them, but is Alabama still the number 1 seed overall, and maybe in your eyes, or has it become Kansas or someone else? And now, as far as that, is it possible for Alabama to lose that 1 seed over the course of the SEC tournament?
To lose the 1 seed? No, I don't. They're locked into a 1 seed for all intents and purposes. They're going to be a 1 seed come tournament time next week. But I do still have them at the number 1 overall seed as things stand right now. It's difficult to put those teams into a 1, 2, and 3 between them, Houston, and Kansas they're all pretty dang close to each other. But a few things stand out on Alabama's resume for me. Their Q1A wins, and the committee showed in their top 16 reveal a couple weeks ago to really highly valued those road wins. And so their Q1A wins, they've beat Houston on the road, beat Arkansas on the road, beat Auburn on the road, and those are their best 3 wins. And that's extremely impressive in the committee's eyes, especially that win over Houston, where Houston's only lost one other game this year. And so for me, I've seen a lot of people moving them off the number 1 overall seed, but they still stand there on the number 1 overall seed and still until I see something different.
Okay, that makes sense. I understand that thought process, and I think the record for Kansas's Q1 wins is probably the biggest conversation point. Where do you have Kansas, just out of curiosity, in relation to them?
I've got Kansas number 2 overall right now.
Okay, yeah, so
and
1 and 2, that makes perfect sense. Yeah,
and Houston at number 3. So I think those 3 are so tight, though. I don't remember a year where we've had 3 teams that it really could be a toss-up. You could look at any of those teams and say, yeah, that should be the number 1 overall team. I don't remember a year like that. So.
Okay. So the next 2 teams I want to talk about, to me, feel very similar, so I'm going to lump them together. And I know that me and Maddie, we live in Northwest Arkansas, so this is always a hot topic every day for us. Arkansas and Auburn. Neither one of these teams is exactly playing great basketball over the last couple of weeks. I believe Auburn was lost 7 out of 10 games at one point throughout the course of this time frame. For both of those teams, they kept losing. Obviously, Auburn won against Tennessee. Arkansas lost 3 in a row, but they both became locks. How did that happen, and why? What's the reasoning for that?
That's a great question. So the teams are pretty similar. Arkansas's got the better metrics than compared to Auburn, and that's really what has done it for Arkansas, because their resume is not great. That Q3 loss that they've got at LSU, not a good loss. They don't have great wins. The win at Kentucky, I think, is their best win right now. And so they would be a bubble team if their metrics were a little bit worse. And their road record is pretty ugly too, 2-8 on the road. But those metrics really kind of have saved them this year. And then I think this won't play into the committee's mind, but getting Nick Smith Jr. back is going to be a big difference for them. And so I've locked them into place. Even if they were to lose their first SEC tournament game, I would still have them on probably the 9 line, somewhere around there. So,
okay, well, that's good. That's positive here. Then on 10, of course, they're facing Auburn in their first game of the SEC tournament. For Auburn, what locked them in? Do you think or I know you said they weren't a lock, but is it the Tennessee win that finally saved them? Because it looked like they were falling down the mountain there for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely the Tennessee win. I should probably take a closer look at it, given that other people have locked them at this point. But the fact that they're playing Arkansas in the first round is kind of a lifesaver. I think if they were playing someone like South Carolina or Georgia or something along those lines, and they were to lose that game, they may be in trouble. But losing to Arkansas is probably not going to push them all the way down and out of the field. So that win for Tennessee pushed them up, I think, 6 spots in my bracketology from a top 11 seed to a bottom 9 seed or a top 10 seed. So yeah, great win for them.
Okay. Maddie, any questions on the Hogs or Tigers real fast before we move on to the bubble teams?
Yeah, so I think my biggest thing, like David had said, we've seen a lot of talk from Vandy fans on our Twitter lately. Just kind of looking at some of the wins that they've had recently on both teams, what do you think separates that Auburn and the Vanderbilt team?
Oh man, that's a good question. So Vandy's got, let's compare them side by side here. Vandy has more Q1 wins than Auburn, and that's a surprise. That's not something you'd see in a typical season. But they've been impressive over the last few weeks. What's going to hurt them, obviously, is they've got some pretty bad losses. Home loss to Grambling State, Q4 loss. That's a really ugly loss.
I get to argue about that one once a week right now. Anytime a Vandy fan tweets at us. Yeah, go ahead though. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow there.
No, you're good. Yeah, that's a loss you don't come back from typically. So
yeah, it's poison. Yeah.
A loss at LSU, just like Arkansas had, and then a home loss to Southern Miss is also Q3, although it's bordering on Q2, but they don't have the metrics to get there. The wins may put them into the NIT and in one of the top 3 seeds maybe, but but they're not going to get to the NCAA tournament unless they win the SEC tournament.
Okay, so since we're on Vandy right now, we have seen them in Lenardi's next four and a few other people putting them in that range. I know it's probably, I mean, heck, they got AP and coaches poll votes for the top 25 this week. It didn't make a ton of sense to me because, I don't know how a team that's not going to make the NCAA tournament is going to get votes into that. But for Vandy, do you think at this point they have to win the SEC tournament in order to make the NCAA tournament, or is there still a hope that they could bubble their way in there?
I think they've got to win the SEC tournament. A lot of these, the challenge this year is the bubble is so rotten. It is so bad that once you get down to the next four out, by the time I get to the end of my next four out, I'm like, all right, I've got to pick a team to put in here. Like no one deserves it. I don't think anyone's going to make it from the next four out up to into the tournament. And so I wonder, I don't know, I can't speak for Joe Lenardi or anybody like that, but I'm curious if that's the process. Is just saying, I can't find a team. Vandy's had some good wins lately. Let's throw them in there.
Yeah, right.
But there's not a chance. There's no way.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's three combined Q3 and Q4 losses in there, and then they just magically appear, and it's so strange. For Mississippi State, though, you said they're getting close to a lock, so I'm assuming they don't necessarily have to win the SEC tournament to make sure they're or to get into the NCAA tournament.
No, I don't think they do. I'm a little bit higher on Mississippi State than most. Actually, I've got them as a high 10 seed right now. Reasoning behind that is they've got some good wins. They've got the neutral win over Marquette. That win is massive. That is better than a lot of wins that those bubble teams in the SEC have. That's a better win than Arkansas has. It's a better win than debatably Auburn has. I
see what you're saying.
It's close, but that win is going to pull a lot of weight. A win at Arkansas, home win over TCU is big. The home win over Texas A&M, another home win over Missouri. And so I've got them as a high 10. I think those two wins, the Marquette and Arkansas wins, are going to pull a lot of weight for them. Okay. So I think I've determined that if they beat Florida first round, I think they're going to be a lock into the tournament as long as they don't go to play against Alabama and absolutely get blown out of the building.
So one win away now for Mississippi State.
Yep. That's what I think.
3 loss to Florida at a neutral site. All right. Or actually it wouldn't be Q3, it would be Q2.
It'd be Q2.
Yeah. All right. So for these two, Vandy's not on your list, but for Mississippi State, you said the bubble's terrible. Are there any teams though that we necessarily need to pay attention to that could impact the bubble and Mississippi State's chances of locking in should they lose to Florida or something like that?
Not from the SEC specifically, but from around the country.
Yeah, from around the country, just anything, hey, we need to look at this game for our team's hopes,
Yeah, that's a good question. If they were a seed line lower, I'd be watching some other teams a little bit more, but on the 10 line, I feel like you're pretty safe. You just handle your own business and you should be good. But some teams that I have right around them that they may be interested in watching this week to see if they can move up or if they'll move back down. I've got USC right around them. Memphis right around them, Providence right around them. Pitt is just a few spots lower than them. Rutgers may move up this week if they can win some games. So those are the teams that I have nearby.
Okay. So anybody else though, like from the SEC tournament or from another league that you think might end up being a bid stealer that could impact this race? I know you said that you've got Mississippi State as a 10, so they're a lot safer and from a bid stealer like that. But should, the committee view it a little bit differently, who do you think's out there that might disrupt things?
Yeah, so you guys are gonna just shut me off. You're gonna turn off the podcast right here. But I picked.
Oh, we've heard some crazy stuff. You're fine.
I picked Kentucky to win the SEC tournament, so I don't think there's going to be a bid stealer coming from the SEC. If there was, I'm looking at the bracket right here. It would probably be Vandy, right? If they could beat Kentucky, go handle A&M. Maybe they've got a shot at beating Tennessee, Bama, someone like that to get a bid. But I don't see Florida getting there. And obviously, I don't see Georgia, South Carolina, Ole Miss, LSU getting there. It's
a long journey for them to get there to begin with. Yeah.
So all odds are we probably don't have a bid stealer from the SEC. I think the league that is strongest to have a bid stealer, strongest chances, is the Conference USA. And the reason being that Florida Atlantic is a really strong team. They're going to get into the tournament. They're a lock into the tournament right now. Only 3 losses all year. But that conference has some pretty good teams. UAB is just behind them.
I was going to
North
say,
Texas.
yeah, I was going to touch on that because we've actually, me and Maddie did our mid-major spotlights at the beginning of the season. She had UAB. I picked Furman. So,
oh, nice. There you go.
Yeah. So far we've done pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been really impressed by UAB lately, and I think it'd be super fun to see Jelly Walker up in the NCAA tournament. So I picked them to win the Conference USA. I think that league's going to be a bid stealer. Other leagues, I don't see the Pac-12 getting one. I think Arizona and UCLA are just way above the competition in that league. Big East could be interesting. You may see a Villanova or someone like that pull off a few wins in a row. And the tournament is always at St. John's. So it's kind of a home tournament for them. They may pull off a few wins, although I don't see that happening.
We like Mike on this podcast, though. We'll be cheering for St. John's. So,
oh. And then Big Ten, I think the most likely candidate there is Michigan. Actually,
okay.
The reasoning behind that, they don't have a tournament resume right now. They've lost too many games this year, I think. And their Q1 and Q2, they're 5 games below 500, and that's just not going to get them there. But they've been playing really well in the past few weeks. And beat Wisconsin in overtime last Sunday, then lost to Illinois in double overtime this week, just lost to Indiana yesterday in overtime. They're playing against some of the best competition. They're playing really well right now. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see them beat Rutgers this week and then go beat Purdue would be their next game. And then Michigan State after that, and they handled Michigan State this year. And then you'd get to the finals. So I could see it happening, but in all likelihood, we probably got maybe 2, maybe 3 bid stealers coming.
Okay, so that's a worry for 4 bubble teams right there. So yeah, that's interesting. Hopefully Mississippi State stays off that horrid bubble line there for themselves. For the conference tournaments, this isn't just in relation to the SEC tournament. This has just become a thing, I think, and I think me and you talked about it on Twitter earlier this season. What is the actual value of these conference tournaments, and how close attention does the committee, pay attention to these? Because I know we've talked about this. Tennessee and Texas A&M last year would be prime examples of just where the committee actually sees the conference tournaments. Go ahead and give your general thoughts on what the committee's telling us at this point.
Yeah. So, I wish the schedule was a little bit different. I wish they would do conference tournaments and then wrap them up by, I don't know, say Wednesday this week, and then have the committee start meeting after conference tournaments have been finished before putting a field together. In actuality, what they do is this week, just in 2 days from now, the committee is going to have their first meeting. And on Wednesday, they're going to go through and vote teams into the field who they think are already into the field, don't need more discussion. So that list is a max of 36 teams and will typically be around 30 teams that they immediately just vote straight in. Then they spend Thursday going over the next handful of teams that go into the field, voting on who gets into the field. And then Friday they'll spend scrubbing that down to the last 4 in. And then Saturday they spend seeding the bracket and putting teams into regional pods where they'll play for the first round. And so by the time you hit Saturday, which is the semifinals for a lot of these conference tournaments, or the finals, the field's already set, the teams are already lined up. You can't really make a difference unless you go win your conference tournament and win the auto bid. And so I've been saying on Twitter quite a bit for some of these people, a team like Michigan, for example, they're going to play Wednesday, which is the first day that the committee meets. They're going to play Rutgers. If they beat Rutgers, I don't know that that's enough to push them into the field, and I don't think it is. But then you would play Purdue the next day on Thursday, and by that point, the committee may have already decided all the teams that are going to be in the field, and it may not make a difference whether you beat Purdue or not. So for a lot of those teams, it's conference tournament championship or bust.
Okay. So for the bubble teams, there's already been the vote that occurs for that first 30 teams. I guess my next question is, can teams improve their seeding? Really, or is it like up to Saturday? Really, that's your last chance to Friday night even to improve your seeding because you said they seed on Saturday.
Yeah, ideally you'd be able to improve your seeding because they go through and scrub it on Friday. But obviously last year we didn't see. I mean, most people thought that Tennessee was going to end up above Duke, and just didn't happen. For whether that's because they had already scrubbed the field and decided that's what it was going to be, or whether the name on the uniform played a big deal since it was Coach K's last season.
I bet to say there's a metric that we're not incling in that, and it's called
Yeah,
Coach K's last season.
called Coach K's farewell tour.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, ideally it would play a little bit more into hand about how you can affect your seeding from there. But I also get the point of view that by this point you've had 35 games to improve your seeding over the course of a season. One game's not going to make a huge difference in your metrics, or your net, or your quad records. And so by that point, a lot of times the committee, I assume, just says it is what it is. Like, you had chances over the past couple months to improve.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. All right. So as Maddie knows, I like to ask everybody a really stupid question before they get out of here. For a while, we've been picking on Joe Lenardi with our bracketology guests. So I'm instead going to switch the target here. Do you have any thoughts or anything that you want to share to Jerry Palm out there, and your thoughts on his excellent work that he does for CBS?
That is a loaded question. That's a very loaded question. I wouldn't be into bracketology if it weren't for the intrigue that I've had in some of those people, those grandfathers of the bracketology, Joe Lenardi, Jerry Palm, a lot of those people. And so I wouldn't be doing this today if it weren't for them. That being said, there is some pretty bad bracketology that gets put out there, and
yeah,
I sure wish it was a little bit different, but and I don't know where the point is that you have to say, okay, enough's enough. But I listen to the CBS Eye on College Basketball podcasts, and it irks me every time they start talking about Jerry Palm's bracketology. But it is what it is, and he scores just around maybe below average on the bracket matrix every year, and we'll see how long he keeps it up.
I gotcha. Go
my
ahead,
go-to question for all the bracketologists has been, who is your dark horse this year? Who's our St. Peter's of 2023? What's your pick?
All right, let me look at my seed list. Oral Roberts is going to be a tough team to beat.
They're Vanover. Yep.
Yeah, they're a little bit underrated, I think. And they couldn't be an at-large team with their resume. They've played way too many Q4 games. But for the games that they have played, they've played extremely well. And I think they've got a really solid team. And I love Max Asmus. So I think they could be a dark horse. Drake has looked really good down the stretch, just won their conference tournament yesterday. So they could be a dark horse. UNC Asheville actually yesterday won their conference tournament. They're not, a lot of people are going to have them on the 16 seed line. I've got them on the 15 seed line, just like St. Peter's last year. The reasoning behind that is they have a Q1 win. Not many teams down in that area have a Q1 win, and I don't think the committee is going to punish a 1 seed and make them play against a team that already has a Q1 win. So I've got them on the 15 seed line. I could see them pulling out a sneaky win against someone like Arizona, who has struggled against some of the lower competition this year. And making a run at it. So watch those 3 teams.
Okay. Awesome. That's a good list to put on for our bracket show next week. All right. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you at and where they can find your brackets and all the projections and everything that you got going down for, now until Selection Sunday?
Yes, of course. You can find me at 801 Bracketology on Twitter, or 801bracketology.blogspot.com. Or just head over to the bracket matrix, and I'm listed as 801 on the bracket matrix, and you can compare me to some of the other bracketologists that do this. So that's where you'll find me.
All right. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being on the show today. Our last bracketologist of the season. Everybody give him a round of applause. It's been a fun ride. We'll try to have him back next year as well. Again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Great talking to you, man.
Yeah, y'all have a good one.
That was fun. That was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. That was a good conversation. Especially because like this time of year, there's only so many things to focus on. That's conference tournaments and bracketology. I mean, what are we playing for? We're playing for March, baby, and that's why we're here. I'm pumped up right now. And our sponsor for this episode is SeatGeek. Right now, you can get 20% off, or sorry, excuse me, $20, not 20%. That'd be a heck of a gift. $20 though, still pretty great. Still pretty great on any tickets from SeatGeek with your first purchase, and you can get promo code VSN. Take care of that for you. Maddie, we have the SEC tournament. It is time to rock, and what I consider to be one of the worst things that we do in college basketball, which is the conference tournaments, because they're completely pointless, as we just heard in that conversation. And also they have the potential to lead to injuries right before March Madness and yada, 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 and other bad things I have to list. That said, a lot of people love to hang banners at the end of this stupid thing, but let's talk about this tournament a little bit. What are your first thoughts when you look at the bracket?
I mean, so looking at the bracket and, especially in our conversation we just had with Sam, the big thing for me, as I'm starting to learn more about bracketology, is the fact that it doesn't really matter. Like, everybody's already made up their mind. So, for me, the SEC tournament was like, oh, like, yeah, it's a big deal. Like, you got to win, you get into the tournament if you're not already in. So, like he said, conference tournament champs or bust.
Yeah, I've often advocated for what we should do instead of doing this, where we have an extra week of doing yada, 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 and playing a tournament that doesn't really make a lot of sense. What we should do is that we should just automatically qualify the teams that win the standings in their conference. And then if there's a tie between 1 and 2 and there's a split in head to head, they play an extra game this week to determine the winner of that conference. And then you can apply that for everybody else. And then we can have Selection Sunday, this Sunday, and be good to go. But that's if I was king for a day of basketball. I'm only wearing a Bill Murray outfit today with my Toon Squad jersey and backwards hat on. So who am I?
I mean, Bill Murray is basically a king, so it counts.
Bill Murray is a king, and I do love Bill Murray. But yeah, no, I look at this tournament, and the thing is that I see the potential for either a very straight shot for a lot of these higher seeds to go through and get the job done, with minor upsets occurring between some of the, the 8-9 game and the 7-10 game. But other than that, there are some paths, I think, for certain teams to take advantage of. And we can take a look at some of that here in a second. But we've obviously got our first round on Wednesday night, and that's going to be between starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's 6 here in our time zone here in the Great Ozark Mountains. But Ole Miss taking on South Carolina. South Carolina, one of the worst teams in basketball when it comes to their metrics, but Ole Miss is without a coach. And I will say South Carolina has looked a lot better in conference play. So personally, I'm a bigger fan of South Carolina winning this first game. What are your thoughts, Maddie?
So I think Ole Miss might get the win here. If we look at, South Carolina, most of their wins have come at home, obviously, as well as Ole Miss. But we got Matt Morrell back. They looked a lot better in that first game without good old Kermit. So, I think Ole Miss is going to get a win here. Not to say that that's going to matter against Tennessee, but who knows?
I like your point about Matt Morrell, because we all know that one player can win a tournament for you, or at least lead the charge to get the job done. I remember being told that when I started playing basketball, and I remember telling kids that it's like, who's going to step up and be the leader? Matt Morrell's a really good pick for Ole Miss to be the leader. I look to South Carolina. I think about Gigi Jackson. You want to prove that you're a lottery pick. Here's your case. Make a run in the NCAA tournament. And it'd be impressive if they got 2 wins against Ole Miss and then go play Tennessee in that next game. That'd be really exciting. I do believe they play Tennessee in that next game. I am correct. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the second game. Of course, we have this super struggling LSU team that McMahon has been trying to get to do anything right in LSU in conference play. But, 2 conference wins aren't going to get you very far. LSU versus Georgia and Mike White's Bulldogs. At times, they've been looking like they can play with anybody. At other times, they can get run off the floor by some of the better echelon of the SEC. It is interesting to look at this and see 3 of the first year coaches in here. This is another battle between 2 of the first year coaches at their programs. Personally, I do like Georgia to win this game. Maddie, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like Georgia in this one. We've talked a lot this season about how Georgia's exceeded pretty much everybody's expectations. I think if we were looking closer to the beginning of the year, LSU might look better, but they had some higher quality wins at the beginning of SEC play. And just as of late, things haven't been looking good for them. So
Yeah.
I'm taking Georgia in that one.
I feel you, definitely so. All right, so let's move on to Thursday night, which is really the first night that we get going on this tournament with some of the better teams in this conference. First game is going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'll have my laptop up in my office or probably going on in the middle of the class since it's a Thursday. But Mississippi State, the 9 seed, taking on Florida, the 8 seed. Of course, we all know Defensive Player of the Year, Colin Castleton, is not playing basketball for Florida because of a broken hand. I will say Tulu Smith is not going to have much competition down in the post, so give me the Bulldogs in this one.
Yeah, another LSU case where, Florida looked a lot better beginning of the year, especially now that Colin Castleton's out. I'm taking MSU in an easy win here.
Hail State on that all day. Interesting, though, it's another battle between first-year coaches, Chris Johns and, of course, Todd Golden getting their first run against each other in the SEC tournament. Interested to see what happens there in Nashville and if Golden can get his guys inspired to make an NIT run, perhaps. Let's talk about the only other game that is actually set, and that is Arkansas and Auburn, 7 p.m. Eastern time on the SEC network. Arkansas, the 10 seed, had a horrible run in conference play, and then a team that has also looked like, hot garbage throughout conference play would be the Auburn Tigers at the 7 seed. Maddie, I just want to ask before I throw my 2 cents in on this, what is your thoughts on Arkansas versus Auburn?
As diehard of an Arkansas fan that I am, I'm nervous. This Auburn team came in, beat Tennessee. Tennessee beat the absolute crap out of Arkansas.
Yeah.
Which now we're looking at a neutral court situation. So that might favor in Arkansas's court a little bit better. Just based on the fact they don't play well at away games. So I feel like a neutral court's going to help them overcome Auburn. Honestly, I think it depends on which Auburn team shows up to how this game ends.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. For that game, I will say I've had a really tough time staying behind this Hogs team. I'm more interested to see how they do when they get out of conference play and into the NCAA tournament at this point, because one of the things that people don't understand is how physical the SEC is. And I do think that they may be better suited for the NCAA tournament than actually playing in this conference, because when you have to go to the paint to score, it can be a tough time for you when everybody's getting slammed around in there. That being said, I don't think it was so much just an absolute shocker that Auburn beat Tennessee in Neville when they desperately needed a win. So like that to me is not the world's biggest shock. That's a good environment to go play in, and especially when you really need a win. To me, it doesn't really say that much about Auburn other than they have the ability to win a big ball game at home. So for my thoughts on this game, it feels like a coin toss game to me. I do like Arkansas, but like it just feels like, whoever wins this game, it's right before seeding time. This might be the most important game as far as like, what 801 was talking about for these guys to have a chance to improve their seed. I think Auburn's sitting around an 11-10 line right now, even though they're a lock. And then Arkansas sitting on a 9-8-10 situation. If they want a chance to make sure that they are a 9 and maybe push to an 8, which we'll see how that goes. Give me Arkansas for the win in this, but I think this is going to be a super tight ball game. The next game is going to be more interesting, or this game will be super interesting. The next game will be a little different.
You touched on physicality there. I think it's going to come down to fouls. If Arkansas can figure out how to keep Auburn off the line, if they can figure out how to make their dadgum free throws for once.
Been saying it for a while. Arkansas's metrics, there's no lie. They're really good. The Kentucky game was an analytical upset. They're good. They just can't make free throws, and it's cost them so many ball games because they're shooting 69% from the line in their losses. That's completely unacceptable. They have to shoot over 70%. Otherwise, they're going to have a hard time winning any ball game. So make your free throws. We'll see what happens next. That's the story of Arkansas this season, because that's what's limiting all of their potential is their ability to make free throws. Yep.
So I think fouls and free throws determine this game. like I said, if Arkansas can figure out how to keep Auburn off the line, I think they're in good shape to take a win.
I feel it. All right, let's talk about the two teams that have buys in here. Tennessee going to be waiting on the winner of Ole Miss and South Carolina. Give me Tennessee to win this ball game and snap this off and on 1-1 weeks or whatever they're doing. Just horrible run for the Volunteers and what should have been a slightly easy finish, in all honesty, because they had some games they should have just taken care of business. Yeah, give me Tennessee to win this game to go to have a rematch with Mizzou in the next round.
Yeah, but I take Tennessee too. I think there is a potential if Ole Miss takes the win over South Carolina. Not to say, South Carolina is absolutely going to get demolished, but when you talk Gigi Jackson, he doesn't really have a whole lot of power to back him up on that South Carolina team. But when you look at Ole Miss, you got Miles Burns, Matt Morrell, another shooter, I can't think of his name, but depending on how Tennessee plays, that could be upset central there for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. Let's talk about the next one, and that's Vanderbilt. Here's the odd thing about this is I think Vanderbilt's game really depends on who they get. You've got either an 11 seed in Georgia. If they were to win and make that next round, that's a very interesting ball game because you got Mike White trying to get his guys into an NIT situation, possibly get as many wins as you possibly can. Probably in Mike White's mind, that would be something for Georgia to make the postseason. So I expect Georgia to be hyped up. It would not shock me if they beat Vanderbilt in the first round of this thing.
See, the thing I'm looking at here is we look at Vanderbilt. It's in Nashville. So this is going to be more of a home game for them than anybody else. So I think we see a lot of fan support coming in for Vandy, and I think it's going to help them launch this first game to a win.
It'll definitely be interesting. Now, if LSU were to win that first game, give me Vanderbilt all day long. Interesting note on Vandy, as they wrapped the season up, they were negative in the net rating, not net ranking. If anybody has not listened to the show talking to me about the difference, the net rating, they were negative in the net rating. They have finally gotten over being one of the last negative teams. There were 5, there are now 4, and they're all playing on the first round. All the teams who have negative net ratings are playing the first round. Vanderbilt has now gotten to 0.5 as their net rating. So yeah, they're playing better ball. They're playing better defense. They're playing better offense. They're allowing fewer points and they're making more points. So Vanderbilt's ability, they're playing really great basketball. I'm not discounting Vanderbilt, but I am saying that there is the ability to make a run. And I think Vanderbilt is an extremely hot team, but every now and then hot teams that lose a game or they stumble at some point. We see it time and time again. So it would not surprise me if Vanderbilt stubs their toe and then Georgia ends up playing Kentucky in that next round.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I feel like the semi-home crowd's going to push Vanderbilt to a win, even if they do end up playing against Georgia. As much hype as I would love to give Georgia because they have had an amazing season for what they're working with and having a first-year coach. I just think Jerry Stackhouse is going to have too many tricks up his sleeve for them.
He's good X's and O's coach, SEC Coach of the Year. All right, so let's talk about the quarterfinals, and this is the last buy segment that we have. Alabama will be waiting on the winner of the Mississippi State and Florida game. Alabama fans were straight up like, we don't want to play Arkansas in that game because they're pretty confident that it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row, especially one that's hungry to finally get a win over you. Getting Mississippi State and Florida into that game feels a little bit more comfortable, especially if Florida was to win that game somehow against Mississippi State. I think Alabama would be playing with food. Mississippi State's got a tough defense. There's the potential, we've seen it last year. Auburn last year was the 1 seed. They got beat by Texas A&M, just a hot Texas A&M team that built momentum off their first win and carried themselves through. Mississippi State could do that, but it would have to start on the defensive end. And we'll have to see how much energy Mississippi State plays with in that next game. So if Alabama's shooting problems and slow starts continue for them, because that's been something of concern here of late with Alabama, it's a possibility. I don't think it happens, but I think it's a possibility that Mississippi State pulls off a victory.
Yeah, as much as, I enjoy watching Mississippi State and their defensive skill, I think their offense doesn't hold up to Alabama, where, they might be able to get something going, But if you have great defense, you still got to put points on the board. And I feel like Alabama's going to outscore them.
I remind you, though, Mississippi State held Alabama to a 3-point deficit in Coleman. So they know what they left on the table there in that last game. So, Mississippi State could be a little bit dangerous. I do think the Crimson Tide win this game, but logic tells me that. But I think there's a greater percentage chance of Mississippi State's defense carrying them to a potential victory for a team we've seen struggle for shooting for a while, and a Mississippi State team that may not be told in the locker room of their actual situation of being a potential lock if they beat Florida. They might be getting a message from Chris going, we need to win the SEC tournament, So we'll see what happens with that. So you never know what messages are going on in the locker room. All right, the 3 p.m. Eastern time game, also on ESPN, just like the Alabama game will be. Missouri waits on the winner of Tennessee and whoever the heck they play. Now we're getting into some hypotheticals out here. Mizzou and Tennessee. Look, I'm going to be honest. We got Mizzou high in our power rankings right now. We know Mizzou's a decent basketball team. A bunch of mid-major transfers, blah, 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 blah. If they play Tennessee, Tennessee wins. That's just my opinion. Tennessee's defense is absolutely going to be looking for revenge for what happened in Knoxville. They won on a buzzer beater in TBA. I don't like Rick Barnes to let that be forgotten. This would be typical Rick Barnes fashion to make a run in the SEC tournament right here. So if it's Tennessee versus Mizzou, one game exit from the SEC tournament. If they were to catch whoever comes from the Thursday game, I like Mizzou to pull that game out, just being the better rested team. But Tennessee, to me, is the bomb that finally blows Mizzou up in this situation. Well-coached team, good basketball team, but we're going to start seeing some different situations. And to me, Tennessee coming into that second game, Vols smoke Mizzou in a rematch.
I agree with that. And I think, we look at a similar situation as we have with Vanderbilt. Knoxville's a lot closer than Columbia, Missouri. So you're going to have more Tennessee fans travel. They're going to feel that love in the game, and I think that's going to push them over the edge to beat Mizzou. I
think that could also be a distinct possibility as the pseudo home field or home court advantage in that one. All right, let's move to the 7 p.m. game between Texas A&M and whoever wins Arkansas and Auburn. Look, this is my thought process, and I will stay committed to it until I'm proven wrong. Texas A&M is a good basketball team, but if they play Arkansas in that quarterfinal, I like Arkansas to beat Texas A&M. Reason being, Arkansas is, to me, when Arkansas is playing correctly and they're playing their game, they're a better basketball team than Texas A&M. They took them as long as they could in College Station. Obviously, the Aggies got hot from 3, and that carried the Aggies back into the game. But Arkansas was very close to beating Texas A&M in College Station. They probably could have ran away with the game minus a couple of rebounds. If they're in Fayetteville, they probably would have just absolutely smoked Texas A&M. Buzz has got this team playing really good basketball. But if in a third game, I just think that Arkansas would be hyped up to play that game. I do like Arkansas over Texas A&M. Auburn, though, Texas A&M, I like to beat the crap out of Auburn. Just my personal opinion. I don't think Auburn has enough firepower to beat a well-coached Texas A&M team. So I think whoever their matchup is, depends on if the Aggies advance or not.
I agree with that. We talked about that last Arkansas Texas A&M game and how if that was on a neutral court, Arkansas wins it every time. So I take Arkansas if they play them, and like you said, Texas A&M's beaten Auburn 3 to 4 times out of 5.
Yeah. So that's our big question mark right there so far on our semifinals. 801 Bracketology, when we were having our conversation with him, he has Kentucky picked to win the SEC tournament. I don't think that's a bad pick at all, and here's why. Whoever they play in their Friday matchup in the semifinals at 9 p.m. on the SEC network, Kentucky should beat them. Just logically should win their first game. It's either going to be Vanderbilt or it's going to be LSU or Georgia. Those are all very favorable matchups. I think they have the best draw in the SEC tournament this year. That 3 seed was the real number 1 seed. So I really like Kentucky because if they face Vanderbilt, Kentucky's mad.
Yeah.
They're mad. They lost in an analytical upset to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt should not have won that ball game according to all the numbers out there. Kentucky, to me, better basketball team than Vanderbilt. Jerry Stackhouse is a terrific coach. Kentucky's got the players, and they've got a good enough coach who's won a national championship. Would not surprise me if Kentucky advances to go play on Saturday afternoon. I like them in almost any matchup that they face in there.
Yep, I agree with that one. I think Kentucky takes it easily. I feel like the team that's going to give them the most trouble is Vanderbilt, but I still think they have the edge and come out with a win.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Also, additionally, I mentioned those net ratings earlier. None of those teams have one that's greater than 1. So positive 1. So I know Vanderbilt's like, come on, we just got above the negative line. But it's like, I'm just saying, like, the group over here is very, very weak. Like, there's nothing but weak teams coming to play Kentucky for their first game. They got a better draw than Texas A&M, who was second in the conference. Texas A&M has to play Arkansas or Auburn. Kentucky's going to get somebody who's, not going to make the NCAA tournament. So it's just weird how the SEC tournament works. All right, let's talk about the potential semifinals. Obviously, I think me and you both agreed Alabama, Tennessee for that first game at 1 p.m. on Saturday. That one to me is interesting, right? Because again, it's another situation where Alabama, if they get to a bad start, there's a team with a really good defense right there next to them. Yep. And if we've already seen Tennessee beat Alabama at home, would not surprise me if Alabama gets to a bad start, Tennessee wins that game.
Yeah, like you said, for me, it's kind of a coin toss. We saw Tennessee take over in that game against Alabama, the last game. Now it's on a neutral court.
In Tennessee. In the state of Tennessee.
Yep. It's one of those, it's a toss-up. Really just depends on who gets hot first, I think.
Yeah, it definitely will be. Tennessee will have a 2-game warm-up before Alabama Alabama have one under their belt in the SEC tournament. If Tennessee's got tired legs, it might be difficult, but honestly, give me Tennessee to advance to the championship game, in my opinion. Maddie, your pick?
I'll play devil's advocate. Let's go Bama.
Okay, you go Bama. All right, so the 3 p.m. game, we both have Kentucky. We both think Kentucky gets into that next round. Look, I'm gonna ride with Arkansas for now. Arkansas versus Kentucky in their third game. Really interesting matchup. Both teams lost at home in this one. I think these two teams are about as tight as you can get. I'm going to go in this Kentucky, though, just being a better rested team in that situation. Should it be Texas A&M? Give me Kentucky again. I'll take Kentucky again in that one because I think they're going to have a dogfight in that first game. They may be exhausted. So I like that. If it's Auburn, same scenario. Give me Kentucky. Kentucky goes to the final to face Tennessee in my bracket.
Yeah, so I think, if it's Texas A&M, I feel like Kentucky's going to take the win. If it's Arkansas, I think there's a chip on the shoulder from this last Saturday.
I can see that.
And, some of the things I've heard may or may not be true. I think they're going to fight. And I think Arkansas is going to put Kentucky to the test.
Okay. Now, do you have Arkansas going that far is my next question.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. We'll rock Arkansas into the semifinals.
Okay.
Yeah, for you, I'm going Kentucky. So Kentucky and Tennessee, it would be my championship game. I'm going to agree with 801 Bracketology. Give me the Cats. Pretty easy draw there. That second and third, their last 2 games are obviously hard, but they get a break for that first game with whoever they play. So I'll favor Kentucky to win the SEC tournament.
So that means I'm going to have Arkansas and Alabama, and I think it's a coin toss.
You think it's a coin toss?
Between Arkansas and Alabama, yeah.
Arkansas would be playing their 4th game. I want to point that out to you as well.
Very true.
And Eric Musselman has yet to win an SEC tournament. He has not been to an SEC championship yet. So I just want to remind you of those facts.
Hey, I'm a believer.
Okay, you're a believer. All right, so you're going to say...
Give me a one-way ticket on the Must Bus.
Okay, all right. I haven't got a lot of reasons to stay, excited at this point. I will enjoy watching. I'll be cheering. I'll be a delusional fan as always. But at the end of the day, I do think Kentucky would beat Arkansas just based on rest. But it wouldn't surprise me if Arkansas-Alabama occurred. And then give me the Tide. And I know that really sucks for Arkansas fans. And it's not that Alabama, I would think, tied in a blowout. And again, it's not because Arkansas can't play with Bama, because they've proven it through 2 games that they can play with Bama. The issue is you're talking about your 4th game in 4 days, and each game gets earlier, except for your first game to the Texas A&M game should they win. That's their only full 24-hour rest in that time period. So, yeah, I personally like Alabama, who gets 24-hour rests in each round. So, just my thought. But, of course, never know.
Yeah,
Alabama.
I know I'm delusional. It's okay. We can talk about it later when I go to therapy.
I do not have Arkansas winning the SEC tournament, nor do I care if Arkansas wins the SEC tournament. I don't care. I just care about March Madness at the end of the day. And that's not to say I won't be watching the ball games. I will. I'll be cheering. I'll want them to win the whole thing while the game's going on.
I'll be at the horse races, so I'll make bets and try and keep up with it best I can.
Well, then we got Selection Sunday to deal with, Maddie, and that's when we do our Selection Sunday show. So I got to figure out when you're getting back from the horse tracks there in Hot Springs, Arkansas. We got to figure out a good time to rock our live bracketology show.
Definitely. I should be back afternoonish, so should be up by the time the picks come in and we can get the party rocking.
Are you coming to my house to watch Selection Sunday? Because you said earlier in some other episodes that you were going to try to do that. Are you guys still going to be on the road back from Hot Springs?
I will try.
You're going to
let you know. I'll keep you up. Keep you up
catch
to
me
date
up on that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds like I'm watching Selection Sunday by myself again. But whatever it is, what it is. But yeah, Selection Sunday. It's going to be huge. It's going to be fun. We'll watch probably 8 SEC teams get into the tournament, and then that Selection Sunday, we're going to have our live show where we're going to be talking about the 8 SEC teams, possibly 9 if there's a bid stealer, getting into the NCAA tournament. Should be a lot of fun. All right, let's talk about also what's going on for us at VSN. Real quick, we're on the dawn of baseball season. So with baseball season being right around the corner, there are a ton of good shows that you need to go check out. Please go check out VSN Baseball. We've got college baseball shows. We've got team-specific MLB baseball shows. There are MLB baseball shows. There's all sorts of good stuff out there. We got shows that cover certain sports from different areas, Go check out VSN Baseball. They'll give you a host of good shows out there to go check out for all your baseball content that you need. Should be a ton of fun, especially as the weather warms up. I will try to get myself to a baseball game here pretty soon. It's not going to happen while we're watching basketball, but, as far as baseball, it's at that time of year again where things start warming up, spring training gets going. So, Arkansas plays at Army tomorrow. Here in Fayetteville, so that'll be a fun one to go drink a beer in the hog pen for. Maddie, what are your thoughts on baseball season getting here?
I'm so excited for baseball season. Caught my first baseball games on Saturday. Unfortunately, not the Hogs. Go RBI. My nephew's little team. They aren't doing so hot, but hopefully they'll turn it around.
Well, that would be good. That would be really good.
Excited to watch some Razorback baseball for sure, and hopefully the Red Sox can do a little bit better this season.
Yep, that would be nice. Oh my goodness. All right, Maddie. That's pretty much it. So what do you got going on this week? Betting with some horses. You got a trifecta in mind
this
or anything
week
already?
Not really. I haven't even looked to see what the lineups are yet. Usually, me and my friends will make a deal and we either drink on the even or odd races and we stay all day. So by the end of the day, it's usually which name I like best or the color of the vest.
It's a way to pick them, I guess. Don't listen to Magic Mike or anything like that out there.
Well, I mean, it's also supposed to rain, so muddy track better for long shots. I might try and win a little money
right now about that. There's a song in the musical Guys and Dolls. And this is the range of knowledge that I have. People who have not listened to this show, they're in the show. There's a line about how horses like mud, and there's certain horses that they're thinking about betting on since it's going to rain. So
it's a way to do it.
Random knowledge. It's a great musical, and you should all watch the movie, you uncultured people, and enjoy Marlon Brando and Frank Sinatra out there, which is really funny because everybody loves Luck Be a Lady Tonight, which is from that musical in which Frank Sinatra sings. He doesn't sing it in the musical, or it's not supposed to be his song. Marlon Brando is the character that's sings "Luck Be a Lady Tonight" in there, and Marlon Brando.
I always forget that he was in Guys and Dolls.
Yep, Marlon Brando in Guys and Dolls.
Yep. My first thought is always, of course, Godfather when I think Marlon Brando, but
yeah, see, there's the connection there, and then you got Frank Sinatra, and
Yep.
you know, we've got all these gangsters running around here. You know, it's the way to go. Yeah, Maddie, you're not gonna be here for Selection Sunday. It's like 2 days before my birthday. What am I gonna do?
I'm gonna try. We usually leave pretty early, like 10ish.
We'll see what happens.
So
We'll see what happens.
Yep. I'll keep you updated. I'll get there as soon as
If
I
you're
can.
leaving at 10 from Hot Springs, you'll get here in time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I'm more than likely gonna be there in time.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. We're not
I
gonna
will come bearing pre-birthday gifts.
pre-birthday gifts.
We'll have a good time.
Beverages or...
I mean, it can be if that's gift of choice. Okay, deal.
All the things we've been through are fading into blue. I would drive to Neptune just to love you more. 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 Floating, holding hands, spacious wonderlands. Oh yeah, freeze the falling tears. We'll be always lost in here. All the things we've been through are fading into blue. I would drive to Neptune just to love you more. Just to love you more. Just to love you more. Whoa, whoa, just to love you more. Floating, holding hands, spacious